Welcome to the Live Truly Free podcast, where we provide fatherly guidance to entrepreneurs at any level of their journey. Hi, I'm George Black, and this is AJ. Are you ready for this week's adventure of building great companies and discovering the Live Truly Free lifestyle for entrepreneurs? Awesome. Let's get started.
So, George, for this week, we wanted to keep digging into these letters. And this week in particular, I wanted to go into one of the sage advice to applies that you had. So for this one, I was thinking we just start off with the first one that you included in the book. It's very early on when Max is trying to figure out more about himself and what he wants to do, where he's trying to go in life. And Mr. A gives him this application to start pulling those ideas out so that Max has something to workshop from. So what I was wondering, how did you come up with the sage advice to apply? Like, what was the story behind it, and why did you include them throughout the book?
Sure. Yeah, so for those who aren't familiar, let me give a little context. The book is The Next Level Entrepreneur. Focus your passions, map your directions, build a great company. AJ and I have just recorded the audiobook, hoping to get that released. The idea of sage advice to apply, what I toyed with was I wanted to put some kind of application with the book, because when I worked with numerous companies, led numerous companies, and I'm all about real world, make it work. And if it doesn't work, why are we talking about it? If I can't apply it, then, I don't want just, because you're going to hear us talk about dreams. And we've been talking about that a little bit, but we want application. I want application. I want rubber meets the road kind of tangible stuff. And then I debated, well, do I put the exercises and make kind of a workbook? And I rejected that because I wanted one seamless flow.
Yeah. Because people might not go buy the second workbook.
Correct.
I just read the book. Why would I want to do work associated with the book or something like that? Yeah.
Yeah, and there's no good name for the book, right? You can call it a manual. You call it a workbook. I've seen these programs call stuff homework, I'm like, that's so negative. So I came up with sage advice. So sage is a wise person. And this is taking Mr. A's sage advice to Max and applying it.
Okay, so you're kind of pulling the sage advice that he's given Max, and then you're pulling it out to be like, this is what he just told Max, but directly talking to the reader now.
Directly.
So you go from Mr. A talking to Max to now this is George pulling that out, so it's me talking to you.
Right, and it literally is step by step, and it recounts or quotes from Mr. A or Max, and just walks you through a real simple process that you can take what you just read and apply it.
Okay. So this sage advice to apply is about dreams, right? It's about just sit down, write down all your dreams,
right,
and then rank them from 1 to 10, meaning you have a high desire to pursue this one, or a low desire to pursue it for 1, and a high desire to pursue it for 10. And so you write down your dreams first, and then you go back and you apply these numbers, then you can average them out to see if your dreams are bigger as a kid or if they were bigger today. And the point isn't...
So let me pause you there.
Yeah.
So the way AJ just described that is a linear, here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah.
But let me just jump to the end, 5. The whole point of this sage advice is, in the dream scale, is to figure out, first of all, it's to help the reader identify, are your dreams today bigger or smaller than they were as a kid? Mm-hmm. And so you can go back up the process AJ just said, and that's going to give you, okay, here's how we get there.
Yeah.
So the point of this isn't just to catalog dreams. We're doing some things. There's some real intentionality here.
It's to pull information from those dreams. And you provide Max's information. He gave averages to his dreams,
right,
and showed some of his dreams. And you're pretty much just providing that information for Max as an example.
Right?
Because people aren't going to be like, oh, Max has had these dreams, so that's what I want to pursue. No, Max is just an example to help guide people through it.
Right.
And then I noticed for part 3, and you talk about it, you introduce part 3, saying there's no sage advice to apply in part 3, because part 3 is just, technically it's all sage advice. Would you kind of categorize it as that?
Yeah, so part 3 is the strategic process I've used with companies to lead them to great success, quite frankly, the biggest being a company called Rackspace. And we used the Navigator as they went from 100 million to 500 million more, actually. And the growth in employees was 3x. In the Navigator, we used it in a number of different levels in the company, and we use it on the whole corporate level. So it's tested and it works. And my idea was, how do I give this? I mean, this is here's the way I kind of, my marketing pitch is, you're getting a $20,000 strategic consulting package for $20 in this book. Or the audiobook. It's an exact, we think it's word for word. We're checking it.
Yeah.
But so the third part of the book is that entire process, like what I took Rackspace through. There was no need for sage advice because Mr. A is telling Max what to do. And the intentionality of the book is that you've got an example.
Okay.
So like we get into envisioning sentences. Okay. So, well, what's an example of that? Well, you've got Max. And so you can just read what Max came up with, and he's doing it step by step.
Got it. So just kind of like summarize structure of the book here. Parts 1 and 2, you include the sage advice to apply because you're pulling out what Mr. A told Max, and now you're saying this is how you apply it to,
right.
Now you're telling the reader this is how you apply it to your life. But part 3, you give the sheet, you talk through each process in each letter, and then Mr. A is coaching Max through it, but the reader can interpret that as Mr. A is coaching me through it, and now I can just watch Max's as an example.
Yeah, and something else occurs to me, AJ. The way the book started at part 3.
Mm-hmm.
That was my plan because I had, like most of the company, I've not worked with startups. I've worked with, I have worked with startups, but I've not used Navigator with startups. And I've used it with ongoing companies. And I go, but wait a minute. What if you're starting up? Because this process will work. Won't be your next level. It'll be your first level. Yeah. And I go, well, how do I know how to start a company?
Yeah.
And so that's where the dreams and desires are so important. Mm-hmm. So it's strategy sourced in your passions, but I've got to get you to your passions and help you figure it out. So that's why it's focus your passions. It's not any passion you have, it's certain passions.
Yeah. And you pull those passions out. So this sage advice, it's the first one to apply, and it's right on target with focus your passion, just trying to pull those passions out. And Max starts this, so you go, Max has a letter, Mr. A responds, we're going to cover that letter, which is true desires. And then after that, you attach the sage advice, which pulls out what Mr. A says in true desires. But I wanted to read this question that Max asks Mr. A to kind of pull out the context of this, and then we can really get into these dreams and why they're so important and powerful, and why Mr. A even and you have the reader pull these dreams out of themselves and rank them. So Max says, are there dreams that are ridiculous? How does one distinguish between wishful thinking and dreams that are real and big and actionable? How does one have big dreams that are truly transformative and achievable?
So, AJ, as you read that question, what hits you about it?
Just how relatable it is. Because you think, I'm 22 years old, so I've had 22 years worth of dreams. And some of them are just like way out there and not even close to being a reality. But some actually could be reality if I pursued them hard enough. And what Max's question is here is, he's basically like, yeah, I have all these dreams, but how do I know which ones are actually worthwhile to pursue and actually actionable, achievable? Which is a question I actually have myself.
Yeah. So, and I think it's not just you. Yeah. I have that same question. Don't we all have that question where it's like, are there dreams that are just simply ridiculous? Well, and then how do you sort through these dreams and figure that out? Mm-hmm. And this is so there's a part of Max that's very practical.
Yeah.
And here's the thing with this question is, we can diminish dreams that need to be bigger, and we can make dreams that should be smaller too big.
Mm-hmm. And so you can like misattribute what. It's so easy to just misattribute what dream you're wanting to pursue, right?
Right. See, and this is not, yeah. So the thing is, and this is a recurring thought in the book, is this is not a follow your dreams book.
Yeah.
And this is a focus your passions book.
Yeah. And so that's why you attach the sage advice the way you did, where it's like, yeah, write all your dreams. We're not following all of them. We're going to focus them through this dream scale that you've attached.
When you start looking at your dreams as a kid and today, you might think they're all about the same. You know, all my dreams as a kid are ridiculous. All my dreams as an adult are very smart, you know, or something.
Yeah.
But you're not going to, when you see them written out and then you start putting a number beside them.
And with the judging criteria of desire to pursue.
Right.
Not the judging criteria of you trying to filter what's realistic.
Right.
But what do you want to pursue?
Right. So like in a previous podcast, we talked about a friend of yours who dreams of being rich.
Yeah.
Well, he didn't really want, what he wants to do is be rich, but it's really a dream. Okay. But, where does that fall on the scale? When you start to put that on the scale, you're going to find with other dreams, you're going to find there's other dreams that you go, well, I also want to do that, and I want to do that, and I want to do that.
Yeah.
And then this forces a ranking.
Yeah. Into what you want to do most.
Right. So a 10 is great desire to pursue, and 1 is less desire to pursue.
So the theory behind this and your thinking behind it is when you rank your dreams as a kid and your dreams of today, which one do you think is going to rank higher?
Well,
for most people.
Yeah. For most people, my hunch is the older you get, the more life you've experienced. And the more life you've experienced, you've discovered some dreams don't come true.
Yeah.
There's disappointments. The coach tells you you'll never be the best ball player or whatever. Or, you can't get the right score to get into the right kind of school. Mm-hmm. Or whatever your dream is, there's some disappointments that start to come along your way. So we dismiss our dreams as a kid, and I'll give you a great example. So we tested all the sage advice, everything in this book, mm-hmm. because I knew it worked in like the corporate setting when I'm leading a company, yeah. but I didn't know how well it would work by just reading the book and doing it. Mm-hmm. And we tested it with like 100 senior level management students at a major university, and the thing that came out was, in talking with them, like one said, well, I wrote down I want to be Indiana Jones. and he goes, that's ridiculous. I said, oh, did you write down Indiana Jones because you want to be an archaeologist? He goes, no, I wrote down Indiana Jones because he's got an adventurous life. And I go, that's your dream. So this is why you have to kind of distill what's in your list.
Yeah.
And he wants to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah. And then what you just said there takes me to the point of what Mr. A responds to Max's question that we posed. Mr. A responds by saying, when he's talking about dreams, he says, I refer to the deepest desires of the truest you. Mm-hmm. And I feel like this is another one of those brevity is the soul of wit quotes that we've heard from Mr. A, where he's saying so much, but he says, what is this, 7, 8 words?
Right.
Right. Could you unpack that a little bit? And tie into
there's a lot. And I refer to the deepest desires of the truest you.
And why are childhood dreams so tied to that?
Right. So the context of this is Max is baffled by this guy, Mr. A, mm-hmm. and his response to his great success. He's this tycoon in New York City, on the edge of the telecommunication industry, breaking through new technologies and stuff. And he's got huge dreams. And Max has tiny dreams. So we've already been processing on that in the mm-hmm. letters prior to this. And he says the answer to your question about dreams is both simple and complicated. And it's simple because the answer is just, we're talking about desire.
Yeah.
And if you understand, and it's complicated, then he says, it's complicated because I'm talking about the deepest desires of the truest you. And the deepest desires of the truest you it's like going down into a mine shaft. And we're going to go find the diamonds in the mine. Mm-hmm. And we don't know where they are, but we've got to start digging. And so this letter and the sage advice to apply is about digging out those diamonds.
Oh, okay.
So when the student says, well, I want to be Indiana Jones, you're with your shovel and your pick and you've hit something.
Yeah.
And so you dig it out and you start looking at it and you go, wait a minute, this is a diamond. Mm-hmm. I have a deep desire for adventure.
Got it.
And what does adventure do? Well, it exposes you to risk. And so you're a risk taker. Mm-hmm. You have a desire to take risk. There's a lot of people who don't want to take risks, okay? We're not saying anything bad about them. We're just saying, who are you? And so one of the deepest desires about this guy is he wants to do it. He has a desire for adventure, and he's okay with taking risks.
Okay. And you think that those childhood dreams are going to be more likely to have those diamonds beneath them than the adult dreams? Is that just because when you're a child, you're naive in the world, you don't know what's going on, so you're really just speaking from the point of like inside of you? Whereas when you become an adult, you start dreaming and thinking up things from the point of what you've seen, like your experience, versus a kid, it's just like what's inside of you. Am I distilling that right?
Yeah, just watch. Okay, so I'm going to use boys as an example because I was one, and I can relate to that easier. But girls do the same thing, right? I was just recently sitting at a park. I was at a park, and it was a whole group of fourth graders, and they were all playing in the park. And these boys, there was about 4 or 5 or 6 of them, had these sticks, and they were doing sword play with the sticks. I am not making this up, and they were on some adventure.
Mm-hmm.
And so the world hasn't crushed that out of them yet.
Yeah.
To say, that's silly, that's stupid, And I give an example in the book, but it's like they were having a sword fight. There was some story behind that sword fight.
Yeah, and that you're pulling like nostalgia out of me right now, because I'm thinking back to when I was in elementary school and we're playing on the playground. We played like cops and robbers out there, and you'd actually think you're a cop or a robber. And
right.
When you went in between the monkey bars, like the ladders for the monkey bars, we used that for a jail. When you went in there, you actually felt like you were in jail. Yeah. Like you, as a kid, you'd actually be able to picture all of these things, and it was like you were actually in that setting, even though the setting was a playground.
Right.
That was a side of just my nostalgia that you just triggered in me.
No, and so inside of that, now there may be some diamonds, and there may not be.
Yeah.
But here's the thing: is when you go into your childhood dreams, you're going to start that is the best place I think you can go to start to find elements of the truest you.
Yeah.
Now it's completely undeveloped.
Yeah.
Okay, but there's something. I'll go back to these boys, and there was something in that adventure that they were having, and you could watch each kid and see it was a different story for each one.
Mm-hmm.
And some were more into it, and some were just there because their friends were doing it or whatever, and they didn't really understand what was going on. But there's a couple of guys, and they were leading this thing. They knew what was going on, and so like you might discover that in yourself, and you go, oh, I have a desire to be a leader. Not everyone wants to be the leader.
Mm-hmm. And you just said something in there that I want to pull out, because we keep referring to the deepest desires of the truest you.
Right.
And you said in dreams, they're just undeveloped. I want to tie this into what we were talking about in a previous episode. We were talking about castles in the air.
Right.
And you said the massive men live lives of quiet resignation.
Desperation.
That turns into resignation?
That is a confirmed resignation.
Okay.
I think in that, I may have left the word confirmed out.
Okay.
When I was quoting it, because I'm doing this off the top of my head.
Yeah. And so when you say that quote, when we take that quote that we talked about previously and what we've been talking about today, it's almost like those men who live that life of resignation, they just have a bunch of undeveloped dreams. They never went into the mine. They just left the diamonds there. They know they're down there, but they've just resigned from even looking.
Well, actually, they don't even know they're there anymore. That's my contention. If you look at, and I keep talking about men, but this applies to ladies too. It's just a different application, and I'm not very fluent with that application. But watch these boys, okay, at 10 years old, then 20, and then 30, and 40, and 50, and life comes on to you, and there's bills to pay, and mouths to feed, and there's all these things that start to weigh you down.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got all these worries and cares and anxiousness and stuff like that. And those are the things that begin to settle in.
Yeah.
So that's why my theory is that And I've had some people do this dream exercise and genuinely say, no, my dreams of today are bigger than my kid dreams.
Yeah.
But I think that's the minority. I think most people are going to find something happened to my dreams. And that's what we go into is like, well, what happened to those dreams?
I have an interesting question on those people who said their dreams of today are genuinely bigger than they were as a kid. Mm-hmm. Did those people already pursue some of the dreams they pursued as a kid? Like, do they just like naturally pursue their dreams? So the ones they did as a kid, they pursued them. Maybe they didn't go somewhere, but like they've been living this life of I'm following my dreams. So now when they're an adult, they're not burdened by all the experiences they had of the world. They're still listening to that inner pulse of their dreams.
Yeah, I do think so because my son had a dream in high school. Mm-hmm. And now he's doing it. It's really remarkable. Mm-hmm. And the odds to be able to do this are pretty amazing. Yeah. And at one point, so I'm talking to him one time in the last couple of years, and he goes, I'm living my dream. I'm living my dream. Now, I don't think many people can say that.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to know your dream. Mm-hmm. Are you doing it? And you can feel it. You can feel it. You can feel it when you're in the zone of man. I'm pinching myself. I can't believe I'm being allowed to do.
Yeah, and that's interesting because you see any like comedian who goes up, or like a lot of times athletes when they go on podcasts. At least those are the spheres I most dabble in. They're like, yeah, this joke we have of a career, especially the comedians. They love to make fun of how like they're all living their dream, and they're like, this is a joke that people are like, I'm on this podcast and people are listening to me, or I go up on stage and people listen to me.
And there are radio talk shows and stuff like that, and the caller will call in and I'm living the dream, and it's like a phrase, it's like, they aren't.
Yeah.
I mean, for that 10 seconds, they're living the dream. But I'm talking about genuine living the dream. And the thing is that it's not every dream you have, and so we focus those passions. And that's what this does. So we start with a whole lot, and this is a pattern in the whole book. You'll learn it, where we start with a whole lot of ideas, and we just keep smashing them down and distilling them and sorting them and going through them. Because what we are really after is the true you. Because if you can begin to live into who you're intended to be, why we call it Live Truly Free, you will begin to find life and living truly free.
And living in that rarefied air where you just feel different every day because you're like, I'm living my dream.
Right. Now, it doesn't mean you're not hit with all kinds of stuff in life that, is going to
still happen.
Yeah. I mean, my son, for example, he knows precisely those places when he's really doing what he's designed to do. Mm-hmm. Now, the nature of his job won't allow him to do that all the time.
Yeah.
Okay. And there's a lot of not doing it, but it's worth it to be able to do what he loves.
Yeah. Well, I think we got really into how dreams can reveal your desires and why living that life can be so beneficial. And I think it was great to show people how the Sage Advice works. And you just summed it up a couple minutes ago perfectly, where it's like, this is the first one. So we're trying to get you from all the way here and just slowly ease you into one guiding direction. And I think this was a great exercise to do so.
So if you enjoyed this conversation between AJ and me, I know you're going to love this one. So check it out, and we'll see you next time. And in the meantime, may you live truly free.